The space around Earth was quiet and peaceful like it had been for millions of years, but that changed in just one moment when huge alien ships suddenly appeared near the moon. The ships were so big they blocked out stars behind them, and their metal surfaces shined bright in the sunlight like giant mirrors floating in the darkness. Admiral Lee Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the human ship called Phoenix and watched the alien fleet through the big windows. She had been in charge of Earth defense for 10 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The alien ships were beautiful in a scary way, with smooth curved lines and strange patterns that seemed to move and dance across their hulls. There were 30 alien ships in total, and each one was 3 times bigger than the largest human battleship. The aliens had arranged their ships in perfect rows like they were showing off their power to anyone watching. Captain Park Min-ho stood next to the admiral and his hands were shaking a little as he counted the enemy vessels. "We have never seen anything like this before," Captain Park said quietly. His voice was steady, but Admiral Lee could tell he was worried. The alien ships did not look like human ships at all. Human ships were built to fight with thick armor and lots of weapons sticking out everywhere, but these alien ships looked more like art pieces than war. Machines Commander Kim Yoo-na was sitting at her computer station listening to the radio signals coming from the alien fleet. She had been trying to understand their language for the past hour, but their technology was so advanced that it took time to figure out what they were saying. When she finally got it working, the first alien voice came through the voice belonged to someone who called himself High Commander Veltar, and he spoke perfect English, which surprised everyone on the human ship. He sounded very confident and a little bit mean, like a teacher talking to a bad student. The alien commander explained that his people were called the Corvani Empire, and they had come to talk to Earth about something very important. "We have been watching your small planet for some time now," the alien said through the radio. His voice was smooth, but there was something cold about it. "We have seen your primitive attempts to travel in space, and we have decided to be generous. We will allow your species to join our great galactic community." Lieutenant Henbyo Ram was the youngest person on the bridge, and she was responsible for flying the ship. She had always dreamed about meeting aliens, but not like this. The alien commander continued talking, and every word made her more angry. The way he spoke made it sound like humans. "We're lucky to get this chance. The terms are very simple," Veltar continued. "Your species will give up all your weapons and military ships. You will accept Corvani leaders to guide your governments, and you will provide us with materials and workers as tribute in exchange for our protection. This is a great honor that we do not offer to many species." Admiral Lee listened to every word without changing her expression, but inside she was getting very angry. The alien was basically asking humans to become slaves. He was trying to make it sound like a good deal, but everyone on the bridge could see what it really was. The Corvani wanted to take over Earth without having to fight for it. The alien commander was not finished talking, yet he started bragging about how powerful his empire was and how many other planets they had conquered. He said the Corvani had defeated 12 different alien species and added them to their empire each time. It had been easy because their technology was so much better than everyone else. "Our weapons can turn entire planets into glass," the alien said proudly. "Our shields can stop any attack, and our ships can travel anywhere in the galaxy in just a few days. We have never met a species that could resist us for more than a few hours. Fighting against us would be completely hopeless for a primitive species like yours." As Veltar talked, Admiral Lee was studying his ships very carefully. She had been a military officer for most of her life, and she knew how to read an enemy. Captain Park was doing the same thing, using the ship computers to analyze the alien vessels. The Corvani ships moved in very organized patterns, like they had practiced the same formations many times. The alien ships were definitely impressive, but Admiral Lee noticed something interesting. They moved too perfectly, like machines following a program. Real warships that had seen battle would move more carefully, always ready to change direction quickly, but these ships moved like they were in a parade, not a battle. Commander Kim Yoo-na was also learning interesting things about the aliens. She had managed to listen in on their private radio messages, and what she heard was surprising. The Corvani crew members were talking to each other like this was just another easy job. They were already planning what they would do with Earth resources and how they would divide up human workers. The Aliens had never faced any real resistance before every species they met had surrendered. As soon as they saw the big, beautiful ships, the Corvani had become used to winning without fighting. They expected humans to be scared and give up just like all the others had done. Lieutenant Han. Ram was getting more angry as she listened to the alien demands. She had grown up reading stories about brave space explorers and heroes who fought for freedom. Now, real aliens had finally come to Earth, but instead of bringing friendship, they wanted to make humans into slaves. Engineer Choi Daeho was working at his station, analyzing the energy signals coming from the alien ships. His job was to understand how their technology worked, and what he found was very interesting. The Corvani ships used a lot of power, but they were not very efficient. Their energy systems were spread out all over the ship in patterns that looked good, but were not practical for fighting. The beautiful designs on the alien ship hulls were not just decoration, they were actually part of the power system. But that created weak spots that could be attacked. The aliens had built their ships to look impressive and scare enemies into giving up. They had not built them to fight against someone who would fight back. After talking for almost an hour about how great and powerful the Corvani Empire was, Veltar finally got to the point. He gave Earth 3 days to think about his offer and give him an answer. He said this was very generous because usually he only gave new species 1 day to decide. We'll wait here by your moon for 3 days, he said. If you accept our generous offer, your species will be welcomed into the galactic community. If you refuse, then we will have to demonstrate why resistance is futile. We have never had to destroy a planet, but we are prepared to do so if necessary. When the transmission ended, the bridge of the human ship was completely quiet. Everyone was thinking about what they had just heard. The aliens were giving Earth 3 days to decide between slavery and destruction, but Admiral Lee was already making plans. She looked at her crew and saw determination in their eyes instead of fear. The Corvani thought they were dealing with another primitive species that would surrender without a fight. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this moment ever since. They first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be out there waiting for them. Admiral Lee Soo-jin sat in her command chair and looked at the alien fleet through the big screen. Her face showed no emotion, but inside her mind was working fast. She had listened to every word the alien commander said, and now she was making plans. The 3 days he gave them was not meant to be a gift. It was meant to let fear grow in human hearts until they begged for mercy. Captain Park Min-ho walked over to the admiral with a tablet computer in his hands. He had been studying the alien ships for the past 2 hours, and what he found was very interesting. The Corvani vessels looked scary and powerful, but they had weaknesses that could be used against them. Their perfect formations and slow movements showed they had never fought a real battle. Admiral, the captain said quietly so the alien ships could not hear them through their listening devices. I have been watching how they move. Their ships stay in the exact same positions like they are following a rule book. They do not change course or speed unless their commander tells them to. This is not how real warriors fight. The admiral nodded and looked at the tactical display on her screen. The alien ships were beautiful, but they moved like a parade, not like a fighting force. Every ship stayed exactly where it was supposed to be, and none of them were watching for sneak attacks or preparing for battle. This told her something very important about the Corvani Empire. Commander Kim Yuna had been very busy during the 2 hours since the alien ultimatum. She was the best communications officer in the human fleet, and she had been listening to every radio signal the aliens sent. Her computer screens were full of alien text and numbers as she worked to break their secret codes. The aliens were being very careless with their communications. They sent messages back and forth between ships without bothering to hide them properly. They thought humans were too primitive to understand their technology. Commander Kim had already broken 3 different alien codes and was listening to their private conversations. What she heard made her both angry and hopeful. The Corvani crew members were talking about Earth like it was already conquered. They were discussing how to divide up human cities and which planets they would send human slaves to work on. Some aliens were even arguing about who would get the best human workers for their personal use, but the conversations also revealed something very important. The Corvani had never fought a real war. They had conquered 12 other species, but every single time those species had surrendered without fighting. The aliens talked about their previous conquests like they were just business deals, not military. Victory's Lieutenant Henbio? Ram was working at a navigation station plotting courses for every human ship in the solar system. She was young, but she was also one of the smartest pilots in the human fleet. Her job was to figure out how to move ships around without the aliens noticing. The Corvani were watching the human ships, but they were not watching very carefully. The aliens had dismissed the human fleet as completely harmless. They saw the rough-looking human ships with their thick armor and simple designs and assumed they were dealing with barely advanced cave dwellers. The Corvani ships were smooth and elegant, while human ships looked like flying bricks covered in weapons. Engineer Troy De Ho was having the most interesting day of his career. He had spent years studying alien technology and theory, but now he had real alien ships to examine. His sensors were scanning the Corvani vessels from every angle, and what he discovered was shocking. The alien ships were actually less advanced than human ships in many important ways. They used more power to do the same jobs that human ships could do with less energy. Their weapons were powerful, but they took a long time to charge up and fire. Their shields were strong, but they covered the ships in patterns that left weak spots. The beautiful designs on the alien hulls were not just for show. They were actually part of how the ships worked, but whoever designed them cared more about how they looked than how well they fought. The power lines ran in curved artistic patterns instead of straight efficient lines. This made the ships pretty, but it also made them fragile. On the second day of the 3-day deadline, Admiral Lee called a meeting with all her senior officers. They gathered in the secure briefing room where the aliens could not listen to their conversation. The Admiral had been thinking about the situation all night, and she had made some important decisions. "We are not going to surrender," she said simply. Her voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear the steel underneath. "We are not going to become slaves, and we are not going to let Earth be conquered. The Corvani think they are dealing with primitives, but they are about to learn something about humanity." Captain Park smiled when he heard this. He had been hoping the Admiral would choose to fight. The analysis of the alien ships showed that they could be beaten if humans were smart about it. The Corvani had bigger ships, but humans had better tactics and more experience with actual fighting. Commander Kim reported what she had learned from listening to alien communications. The Corvani were completely confident that humans would surrender. They were already making plans for after the conquest, and they were not preparing for battle at all. Most of their weapons were not even loaded and ready to fire. Lieutenant Han had finished plotting escape routes for all the civilian ships and supply vessels. She had also been working on something else that would surprise the aliens when the time came. The Corvani thought they knew where all the human ships were, but they were wrong about that. Engineer Troy explained the weaknesses he had found in the alien ship designs. The beautiful patterns on their hulls were actually weak points where a smart enemy could do maximum damage with minimum effort. The aliens had built their ships to scare enemies into giving up, not to fight enemies who would fight back. During the third day, Admiral Lee sent a message to every human ship in the solar system. The message was short and simple, but it told the fleet everything they needed to know. The time for hiding was almost over, and soon the aliens would see what humans were really capable of. High Commander Veltar spent the 3 days enjoying himself on his flagship. He had his crew prepare victory celebrations, and he sent messages back to the Corvani homeworld telling them about his easy conquest. He was already planning which human cities he would destroy first to make an example for other species. The alien commander had no idea that humans were preparing for war. He thought the 3-day delay was just humans being scared and trying to find courage to surrender. He had seen this behavior from other species before, and it always ended the same way, with complete submission to Corvani rule. When the third day ended, Admiral Lee activated her communication system and sent a message to the alien flagship. Her words were polite but firm. She thanked Veltar for his generous offer, but explained that humanity had decided to decline. Earth would make its own way among the stars without Corvani help. The alien commander could not believe what he was hearing. No species had ever refused the generous offer to join the Corvani Empire. His beautiful face turned red with anger, and his voice became cold and threatening when he replied to the human message. "You have made a terrible mistake," he said. "Your primitive species does not understand the power you are refusing. We will now demonstrate why resistance is futile. Prepare to watch your cities Burn until you change your foolish decision. Veltar ordered his weapons officers to begin charging the main guns of every ship in his fleet. The beautiful alien vessels began to glow with deadly energy as they prepared to bombard Earth. The show of force was meant to be overwhelming and terrifying. That was when the alien commander got the biggest surprise of his very long life. High Commander Veltar stood on his command bridge watching the energy readings climb on his weapon systems. The 30 ships of his fleet were charging their main guns, and the space around them was starting to glow with deadly power. He had ordered his gunners to target the largest human cities first, so the primitive species would understand what defying the Corvani Empire would cost them. The alien commander was feeling very pleased with himself as he watched his beautiful ships prepare to demonstrate their overwhelming power. No species had ever dared to refuse his generous offer before, and he was actually excited to show these humans why that was a mistake. The bombardment would be quick and devastating, and then the surviving humans would beg for mercy. Admiral Li Su Jin stood calmly on the bridge of the Phoenix and watched the alien ships begin to glow. She showed no fear, even though she knew those weapons could destroy entire continents. Her crew was also calm and ready, even though they were facing an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The next few minutes would determine the fate of humanity. Captain Park Min-ho was monitoring his tactical screens and counting down the seconds until the alien weapons would be fully charged. He had calculated that the Corvani ships needed exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds to reach full power. That gave the human fleet enough time to execute their plan. Commander Kim Yu now was listening to the alien communications and reporting what she heard to the Admiral. The Corvani were so confident of victory that they were not even bothering to watch for human reinforcements. Their sensors were focused on Earth below them, and they had no idea what was about to happen. Lieutenant Hanbyo Ram had her finger hovering over the signal button that would send the message to the hidden human fleet. She had spent 3 days calculating the perfect moment to spring their trap. The alien ships were in exactly the right position, and their weapons were almost ready to fire. Engineer Choi Dae-ho was watching the power readings from the alien ships and waiting for the moment when their energy systems would be most vulnerable. The Corvani had put all their power into charging their weapons, which meant their shields and sensors were running at minimum strength. That was when Admiral Lee gave the signal she had been waiting 3 days to give. She pressed a single button on her command console and sent a coded message that would change everything. The message was simple, but it would bring hope to humanity and terror to their enemies. The message said just 2 words: fleet execute. What happened next would be talked about for centuries across the galaxy as the moment when humanity announced its arrival on the cosmic stage. The Corvani had expected to face a few primitive human ships, but they were about to discover that humans had been preparing for this moment for much longer than they realized. The human fleet did not arrive the way the Corvani ships had, with bright flashes of light and dramatic entrances. Instead, they simply appeared out of the darkness of space like ghosts, materializing from nothing. Ship after ship became visible as they dropped their stealth systems and revealed themselves to the universe. The alien sensors started screaming warnings as hundreds of human vessels appeared around them. The Corvani had 30 ships, but the humans brought 300. The aliens had expected to face a few scared primitives, but instead they found themselves surrounded by the largest military fleet in human history. Pilot Jung Seo Yoon was leading the first squadron of human fighters, and her voice crackled over the communication system as she reported her position. Her small ship was one of dozens of fighters that had appeared right next to the alien flagship. Each fighter was tiny compared to the massive Corvani vessels, but they were fast and deadly. The human ships were nothing like the beautiful alien vessels, where the Corvani ships were smooth and elegant. The human ships were rough and practical. They looked like they had been built in a hurry, with thick armor plating and weapons sticking out in every direction, but there was something terrifying about their simple, brutal efficiency. High Commander Veltar stared at his tactical display in complete shock. The screen was covered with red dots representing human ships, and more were appearing every second. He had never seen so many enemy vessels in one place, and he could not understand how the primitive humans had built such a massive fleet. The Alien commander tried to give orders to his fleet, but his perfect formations were falling apart as Corvani ships tried to track. Hundreds of human vessels at once, the aliens had practiced fighting against small groups of enemies, but they had never faced anything like this swarm of human warships. Captain Park Min-ho smiled grimly as he watched the alien formation collapse. Into chaos, the Corvani ships were trying to turn their weapons toward the human fleet, but they were too big and slow to track the smaller human vessels. The aliens had built their ships to intimidate defenseless planets, not to fight in real space. Battles. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves surrounding their prey. Each vessel knew exactly where to go and what to do because they had been practicing this maneuver for years. The humans had used the 3-day delay to position their fleet perfectly for this moment. Commander Kim Yu Na was intercepting alien communications, and she could hear the panic in the Corvani voices. The aliens were shouting orders and asking for instructions, but their perfect military discipline was breaking down as they faced an enemy they did not understand. The human fleet included ships of every size and type. There were massive battleships with enough firepower to crack planets in half. There were fast cruisers designed to hunt down enemy vessels. There were thousands of fighters that could swarm over larger ships like angry bees, and there were mysterious ships that the aliens could not identify. Lieutenant Hanbyo Ram was coordinating the movement of the entire human fleet from her position. On the Phoenix, her screen showed the position of every human ship, and she was directing them like a conductor leading an orchestra. The aliens had never seen anything like this level of coordination. Engineer Choi Dae-ho was monitoring the alien ships, and he could see that their weapon systems were starting to overload. The Corvani had put all their power into charging their guns, but now they were trapped. They could not fire without hitting their own ships, and they could not shut down their weapons without losing all their power. The human ships did not open fire immediately. Instead, they simply surrounded the alien fleet and waited. Admiral Lee wanted the Corvani to understand their situation before the shooting started. She wanted them to realize that their beautiful ships and superior technology meant nothing when faced with human determination. High Commander Veltar finally found his voice and sent a message to the human fleet. His words were full of anger and disbelief. As he demanded to know where all these ships had come from, he could not accept that the primitive species he had been planning to enslave had somehow built a fleet larger than his own. Admiral Lee responded to the alien commander with calm dignity. Her voice was steady and strong as she explained that humanity had been preparing for this moment ever since they first reached for the stars. The human fleet was not just a collection of ships, it was the dream of every human who had ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. The stage was set for the battle that would determine the fate of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy. The Corvani Empire had never faced serious resistance before, but they were about to learn what happened when they threatened a species that refused to kneel. High Commander Veltar stared at the tactical display showing hundreds of human ships surrounding his fleet and felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. He was afraid. The beautiful Corvani vessels that had intimidated 12 different species into surrender were now trapped like fish in a net by ships that looked like they had been built in scrapyards. Alien Commander tried to regain control of the situation by ordering his fleet to open fire, but his weapons officers reported a serious problem. Their main guns were still charging and could not be aimed properly with so many human ships close by. If they fired now, they would destroy their own vessels along with the enemy ships. Captain Park Min-ho watched the alien ships struggling to reorganize their formations and knew that the human battle plan was working perfectly. The Corvani had built their entire military strategy around intimidation and overwhelming firepower, but they had never learned how to fight when the enemy refused to be intimidated. The human ships began to move in patterns that seemed impossible to the watching aliens. Small fighter squadrons weaved between the massive Corvani battleships, while larger human vessels took positions above and below the enemy formation. The aliens had never seen such complex three-dimensional tactics before. Commander Kim Yu Na was listening to the alien communications and could hear the confusion in their voices. The Corvani officers were trained to fight according to strict rules and formations, but the human fleet was not following any rules they recognized. Every time the aliens tried to predict what the humans would do next, they were wrong. Pilot Jung Seo Yoon led her fighter squadron in a series of high-speed passes around the alien flagship. Her small ships were too fast for the big alien weapons to track, and she used this advantage to gather detailed information about enemy weak points. The data she collected was immediately shared with every other human ship. The Corvani finally managed to fire their first shots, and the space around Earth lit up with beams of deadly energy. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, and every shot that hit a human ship destroyed it completely. But the aliens had a serious problem. They could not hit what they could not catch. Lieutenant Han Bo Ram executed a series of micro-jumps that brought her destroyer directly behind a massive Corvani cruiser. The alien ship was 3 times bigger than her vessel, but she had positioned herself in the perfect spot to attack. The enemy ship had blind spots in its sensor coverage, and she was hiding in one of them. The human destroyer opened fire with all weapons at point blank range, striking the alien cruiser exactly where Engineer Choi had predicted it would be most vulnerable. The beautiful alien ship shuddered as explosions ran along its hull, and its elegant design became its weakness as the damage spread through the decorative power systems. Other human ships followed the same tactic, appearing suddenly at close range to strike alien vessels before disappearing back into the swarm. The Corvani ships were designed to fight at long range where their superior firepower would dominate, but the humans refused to fight that kind of battle. High Commander Veltar realized that his fleet was being destroyed piece by an enemy that fought in ways he had never seen before. The human ships worked together like they were all part of one giant organism. Each ship knew what every other ship was doing, and they moved with perfect coordination. The alien commander tried to break free from the human trap by ordering his ships to scatter in different directions. But this only made the situation worse. The moment the Corvani formation broke apart, the human ships attacked like predators, sensing weakness. Small groups of human vessels swarmed over isolated alien ships. Commander Kim Yoo-na had been studying alien communications for 3 days, and she knew exactly how their command structure worked. The Corvani relied on centralized control, with every order coming from the flagship. When she jammed their communications system, the alien fleet lost coordination completely. Engineer Choi Dae-ho had identified the critical weak points in every type of Corvani ship, and this information was being used by human gunners across the fleet. The aliens had built their vessels to look impressive, but the humans were targeting the spots where form had been chosen over function. The battle was not going the way anyone had expected. The Corvani had planned to demonstrate their overwhelming power by destroying human cities, but instead they found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Pilot Jung Seo Yoon coordinated her fighter squadrons to attack alien ships in carefully planned waves. Each wave targeted different systems on the enemy vessels first. The fighters would attack sensor arrays to blind the aliens, then they would hit weapon systems to disarm them, and finally they would strike engines to leave the ships helpless. The human capital ships were using their heavy weapons to maximum effect. But they were not trying to destroy the alien vessels outright. Instead, they were targeting specific systems to disable enemy ships without killing the crews. This showed a level of precision that shocked the Corvani commanders. Lieutenant Han Bo Ram was using her navigation skills to predict where alien ships would try to run, and positioning human vessels to cut off their escape routes. Every time a Corvani captain tried to retreat, they found human ships waiting for them. The trap was complete, and there was no way out. The aliens had never fought an enemy that showed mercy to defeated opponents, but the humans were offering surrender terms to any Corvani ship that stopped fighting. Several alien vessels had already powered down their weapons and were requesting safe passage. The crew members could not believe they were being allowed to live. High Commander Veltar watched his beautiful fleet being systematically dismantled by human forces and finally understood the terrible mistake he had made. The humans were not primitive at all. They were warriors who had learned from studying every battle in their history, and they had prepared for this moment with incredible dedication. The Corvani Empire had conquered 12 species without effort because those species had given up hope when they saw the alien fleet, but humans were different. They had looked at the impossible odds and decided to fight anyway, and their refusal to surrender had given them the strength to achieve. The impossible Captain Park Min-ho reported to Admiral Lee that the battle was nearly over. Most of the alien ships were either destroyed or disabled, and the few remaining vessels were requesting permission to surrender the mighty Corvani fleet. That had seemed so invincible just hours before was now completely defeated. The human victory was so complete that it would become a legend told across the galaxy for generations. But Admiral Lee knew that winning the battle was only the beginning. The real test would be what humanity did with their victory and how they treated their defeated enemies. The space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of alien ships and the survivors waiting to learn their fate. The Corvani had expected to enslave humanity, but instead they had become prisoners themselves. The question now was whether humans would show mercy or revenge. The battle was over in less than 2 hours, and the space around Earth looked very different than it had that morning. The proud Corvani fleet that had come to conquer humanity was now scattered wreckage floating in the darkness. Some alien ships had been completely destroyed, while others drifted powerless with their crews alive. But helpless High Commander Vel Tar sat in his command chair, staring at the ruins of his fleet and trying to understand what had happened. His beautiful flagship was badly damaged, and most of his weapons were destroyed. The humans had somehow defeated 30 advanced warships with tactics he had never seen before. Admiral Lee Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the Phoenix and looked at the defeated alien fleet. She felt no joy in the victory because she knew that many brave people on both sides had died in the battle. But she also felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. Against impossible odds, the Admiral opened the communication channel to all the surviving Corvani ships, and her voice carried across space with quiet authority. She spoke directly to the alien crews who were waiting to learn whether they would live or die. Her words would surprise them more than anything that had happened. During the battle, we offer medical assistance to your wounded, she said calmly. We also offer safe passage home to any who wish to return to your worlds. There will be no enslavement, no demands for tribute, and no conquest of the defeated. We fought to defend our home, not to build an empire. The alien crews could not believe what they were hearing. They had expected death or slavery, because that was what they had given to other species they conquered, but the humans were offering mercy and kindness to enemies who had come to destroy their world. Captain Park Min-ho was already organizing rescue teams to help the damaged alien ships. He had studied the Corvani vessel designs during the battle, and now he used that knowledge to coordinate repair efforts. Human medical teams were sent to treat wounded aliens, while human engineers worked to fix damaged alien systems. The Corvani crew members were amazed by this display of compassion from a species they had tried to conquer. They had expected the humans to be primitive and savage, but instead they found people who could show incredible strength in battle and incredible kindness in victory. Commander Kim Yu-na established new communication protocols to help coordinate the rescue efforts. She had learned to speak the Corvani language during the 3 days before the battle, and now she used those skills to comfort frightened alien survivors. Many of the Corvani had never seen mercy shown to defeated enemies. Lieutenant Hanbyo Ram led escort formations as the repaired alien ships prepared to leave human space. She made sure that every Corvani vessel had a safe path home and that no human ships would accidentally attack them. The aliens were given star charts and supplies for their journey. Engineer Choi Dae-ho worked closely with Corvani engineers to repair their damaged ships, and during this process something amazing happened. The alien engineers began to understand that human technology was not primitive at all. It was just different, and in many ways it was better than their own. Many of the Corvani crew members asked permission to stay and learn more about human culture. They were fascinated by a species that could show such strength in battle and such wisdom in victory. These requests were granted, and the first steps toward real friendship between the species began. Pilot Yoon Seo Yoon found herself becoming friends with several Corvani fighter pilots who had survived the battle. They shared stories about flying and fighting and discovered that warriors from different species had more in common than they had expected. The bonds formed between former enemies would last for generations. The news of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy, carried by Corvani survivors and independent traders who had witnessed the battle. The story grew with each telling of how the humans had faced down the mighty Corvani Empire and won through superior tactics and unbreakable determination. Another species that had been enslaved by the Corvani began to whisper of rebellion inspired by humanity's example. If the humans could defeat the Empire, then maybe freedom was possible for everyone. The galaxy, which had known only conquest and submission, for generations began to dream of something better. High Commander Veltar was among those who chose to stay on Earth to learn about human culture. He had spent his whole life believing that might made right, but the humans had shown him a different way. They had proven that true strength came from protecting others, not from conquering them. The former alien commander became a student of human history and was amazed by what he learned. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting wars among themselves, but they had learned important lessons from all that conflict. They had discovered that showing mercy to defeated enemies was stronger than showing cruelty. Admiral Lee established a new organization to coordinate relationships with other species in the galaxy. The humans did not want to build an empire like the Corvani had, but they were willing to help other species achieve freedom and independence. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could imagine. Captain Park became the head of a new military academy that taught both human and alien officers how to work together. The tactics that had defeated the Corvani were shared freely with anyone who wanted to learn them. The humans believed that knowledge should be used to protect freedom, not to conquer others. Commander Kim created a translation and communication network that connected dozens of different species for the first time. Many worlds that had been isolated by the Corvani Empire were now able to talk to each other and share ideas. The galaxy was becoming a smaller and friendlier place. Lieutenant Han established new trade routes that allowed peaceful commerce between different species. The humans had resources that other species needed, and they were willing to trade fairly instead of demanding tribute. The economic changes were as important as the military victory. Engineer Choi started a technology sharing program that helped less advanced species improve their lives while learning from more advanced cultures. The humans had proven that cooperation was better than conquest, and this philosophy began to spread throughout the galaxy. The battle above Earth had lasted only 2 hours, but its effects would be felt for centuries. The humans had not just defended their world, they had shown the galaxy a new way of living based on cooperation instead of domination. The age of the Corvani Empire was ending, and something better was beginning. Years later, when historians wrote about this moment, they would call it the day that changed everything, the day when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage, not as conquerors but as protectors. The day when the galaxy learned that sometimes the greatest victories come not from the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but from the courage to stand up and fight for what is right. The humans had won more than a battle. They had won the chance to build a better future for everyone in the galaxy, and they had proven that no matter how advanced or powerful an enemy might seem, there is always hope as long as there are people willing to fight for freedom.